are these people?
So what's first on our your rant, I think, right? Is
I
queued up.
ran. I guess it is
Great.
queued up, I believe. Yeah, it should be. Um,
Nice.
so yeah, so if you were here last week, I talked about how 2 weeks ago, at an event that I'm a part of, well, the organization that I'm a part of had hosted Jamaal Bowman for our benefit event,
Hmm.
and he spoke at it and left shortly after. And last week, we talked about, he mentioned eugenics in his speech, but I feel like he kind of made that connection to making it more of a right-wing talking point. We debunked that last week, uh, reading from a Harvard University article that it was actually elite in academia who actually pushed eugenics.
Yeah.
So Jamaal Bowman didn't mention that. But he mentioned also Jamaal Bowman also mentioned the Great Replacement theory, and
Mm.
I'm sure we're going to be hearing a lot of that
Yeah.
in the upcoming election, I'm sure, and probably within the next few months, years, I'm sure. But so yeah, I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm only going to play part of it. You can watch the whole thing from last week. I also was on Sabby's show last night talking about this in depth as well. So if you want to watch Sabby's, I think she actually
Nice.
clipped this from yesterday. So if you want to watch
Nice.
that too, you could. So, but yeah, let's get into it. So let's see if this will work for me.
I hope so.
And
Yeah, look at that. I just had to unmute it.
Don't have consistent engagement and relationships with your member of Congress and the senators, you have to consistently engage them because yes, fight locally, but please, you gotta engage Congress because Congress has a lot of power to do a lot of things. And in order for, I'll say it this way, I was sworn into office January 3rd. January 6th, there was an insurrection. It was an attack on our nation's capital, the first attack on the capital since the War of 1812. It was done by white nationalists. We just had a horrific massacre in Buffalo, New York, facilitated by someone who was following something called the Great Replacement Theory. He literally researched the closest black community, drove 200 miles to slaughter black people. This is what he did. Tens of millions are being radicalized every day online because they think Trump is the official president and they think the Great Replacement Theory is real. So we may see more of what happened in Buffalo across the country. And we see mass shootings every day.
Okay. So, yeah, I just saw Les Bones tweet at Savvy Ratio Bowman on Twitter. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. But yeah, so he talked about the Great Replacement Theory. And as I mentioned on Savvy's show yesterday and on our stream last week, overall, and I want to preface this because I know a lot of people know me for shitting on the squad. And I think especially given this is an event that I'm, connected with for the teaching advocacy organization I'm part of.
Right.
I didn't mind his speech, honestly. The problem that I had with it is I wish that, especially given this was all mostly teachers in the room, mostly of color, I wish he would have gone a little deeper into really like the core of all these issues regarding eugenics, how that started, and the Great Replacement Theory, and and he actually did mention that there in the speech that there's an economic bent to all of this. And I wish he would have went into that a little more. But so then he actually did tweet out. He actually, I think 2 weeks ago, he tweeted this out. He did this on a thread. I didn't bother clipping out the whole thread.
Right.
But basically, he tweeted, "Today, I'm proud to stand here and lead the introduction of this resolution that condemns the Great Replacement Theory as a white supremacist conspiracy theory that seeks to murder minorities, Jews, Muslims, and immigrants alike." So, so I have somebody who many of you know very well, Professor Richard Wolff, who has a critique on the Great Replacement Theory and what it is and what it isn't, and how our congressman is being complicit in some information regarding it. So hopefully, yeah,
Cool.
I should be able to do it from here.
Yep. Almost. Looked like. Try again. No? Okay, fine.
Yeah, I think if it's...
I want to tell you that there's a considerable amount of truth in the so-called Great Replacement Theory. That's a current right-wing fetish, obsession, and it goes something like this: that white people, males, Christians, and sometimes other categories are being replaced in American culture, society, and economy. And that instead of them, jobs and benefits and privileges are going to be given instead to women, non-whites, non-Christians. You get the picture. The extreme right wing and the not so extreme right wing likes this theory. And I understand why. Because there has been a replacement, but it's not the one they're describing. It's the one they don't want you or anyone else to understand, and so they've substituted their own version of replacement theory. Here's the replacement that actually happened. Over the last half centuries, roughly from the 1970s to now, big capitalist corporations have decided that their best strategy for making money under these current conditions is to, replace expensive workers with alternatives to expensive workers. So let's be clear. Who were the expensive workers? They were overwhelmingly male, white, Christian Americans who, over the last 100 years, through many strikes and struggles, particularly in and with the labor movement, unions, were able to get decent wages. And when you get decent wages, you become a marked person, because the incentive in capitalism is to get around, to get away from high-cost workers and to replace them with something else. There are three basic replacements. Number one, automation. You replace these high-cost workers with machines. Number two, relocate production out of the United States to where wages are much lower. You know, China, India, Brazil, and all of that. And number three, you can replace high-cost workers that are Native Americans by bringing poor immigrants in who are desperate and will work for a little less. Capitalists everywhere in the world use whichever of those mechanisms are available. And if all three are, they do. And they do it to make more profits. Nobody is holding a gun to their head. No one requires them to substitute machines or to go to China or to hire immigrants. They do it because it's profitable. That's the reason. Now, the problem is when you do that, you make problems for the people that are replaced, who are particularly higher paid, white, male Christians in the United States. They become bitter, angry, desperate, furious about being replaced, which they have been by automation, number one, by relocation of jobs overseas, number 2, and the very distant and much less important third one, immigration. The right wing arrives to prevent the bitterness and anger of the replaced white male Christian workers from turning against the capitalists who did all this to them, whose profit is what drives the whole process. The right wing is there to make sure that doesn't happen. The working class of white male Christians shouldn't turn against capitalism. So you got to give them a scapegoat. You got to give them somebody else to blame their replacement on. And that's what they've done. Like right-wingers do throughout the history of capitalism, they're performing their assigned function. Divert, deflect the anger of those being replaced, so that they should be angry at the Democratic Party as if it had the power to do these things, which it didn't. To get angry at China as if it's responsible for the decisions of private capitalist American corporations to move to China. They don't have the power to do that either. Or, the worst of it all, blame the desperately poor immigrants from Central America who come here looking for a better life like immigrants have for centuries. Blame them somehow for being replaced. No, they're doing a good job because guess what? If you look at the right-wing propaganda, it very carefully avoids ever mentioning that the big capitalists are the problem, that the big profit drive of capitalism is the problem. No. Not from them. They know where their money is coming from. They know who their major donors are. Their job is to keep the capitalists safe, and that's what their replacement theory does. Now, you might wonder, why don't the Democrats tell the story the way it is truly to be told? That it's capitalism that's the problem. It's capitalism that has replaced the high-paid workers with machines, with cheap overseas workers, and with immigrants. And the answer is the Democratic Party is Republican light. It's dependent on the same capitalist donors. As Ms. Pelosi told us, we're all capitalists now, speaking of herself. Yes, we are. And that's why the Democratic Party seems as weak and as lame in what it does. Yes, it speaks up for immigrants and women and non-whites, those that the right wing targets. But by supporting them without explaining what's going on, they come off as weak, as supportive, and they create the basis for the right wing to say all the Democrats care about is getting the votes of the people we scapegoat. The reality is we have no one, neither Republicans nor Democrats, willing to say, yeah, there's been a replacement, but no, it's not the fault of those you're targeting. You don't have the courage, you extreme right-wingers, to point the finger at where the problem lies. You long ago sold out to the donors, the capitalists, the wealthy, who keep this system going, who make the profits by replacing any workers who get a high wage sooner or later by someone who gets a low one. That's how capitalism works.
Richard Wolf, I mean, sounds good to me. Like,
any thoughts?
I mean, it just feels like, this has come up in political discussions recently, right? Especially near me, where, people talk about this great replacement theory as if it's, somehow like, and it's confusing to even talk about because, like, is the replacement theory that, like, like that we don't teach actual history, like, or is it the opposite? Is it like nonfiction books, like you got to remember which way it is, but, Like, these are the same people normally arguing that, like, you know, taking down historical Confederate statues is you know, gonna explode the universe because the history, you know.
Right.
Yet teachers who already have terrible history curriculum, right, are going to if the book doesn't omit these things normally, they're supposed to, because that's going to like make people think that I don't know, that there might be some like differences among how our government and historically we've treated, like, you know, black and brown people. Like, that's what we're supposed to do, you know. It's just
Right.
kind of crazy to me.
Right. And I think for me, that was the part, you know, that Congressman Bowman had the opportunity to kind of go into a lot more, and he chose not to, either out of ignorance or he purposely avoided the idea that, yes, there is a great replacement theory, but the key and the magic word is capitalism, in terms of, you know, that both parties are complicit with their donors that are allowing this to happen at the detriment of everybody, you know, as
Right.
far as the working class.
Yeah.
And, you know, and as Professor Will said, you know, the Republicans kind of blame or shift blame onto Democrats for saying, oh, you know, they are the cause. You know, all these others are the cause of why your wages are low, or whatever else.
Right.
And instead of calling them out, you know, in terms of, no, it's the idea that corporate donors are making it the way it is. They're complicit in that. So
Yeah.
they don't say that. And there's a reason why, and I'm sure in thinking about this, there's a reason why that Jamaal Bowman stopped short of saying that it's tied to capitalism. Hopefully I could play this next slide.
I think so. If you click in the middle, it works. Pretty sure. No. Try just hitting next on the slideshow and see if that does it.
What
That's
I've
it.
seen on NYU's campus and what I've seen in polls all over, in CNN even, a Harvard University poll last May showed that people between the ages of 18 and 29, not just Democrats, not just leftists, 51% of people between 18 and 29 no longer support the system of capitalism. And that's not me asking you to make a radical statement about capitalism, but I'm just telling you that my experience is that the younger generation is moving left on economic issues. And I've been so excited to see how Democrats have moved left on social issues. As a gay man, I've been very proud to see you fighting for our rights, and for many Democratic leaders fighting for our rights. But I wonder if there's anywhere you feel that the Democrats could move farther left to a more populist message, the way the alt-right has sort of captured this populist strain on the right wing. If you think we could make a more stark contrast to right-wing economics.
Well, I thank you for your question, but I have to say we're capitalist, and that's just the way it is. However, we do think that capitalism is not necessarily meeting the needs with the income inequality that we have in our country. And let me just...
So actually, did you notice that when this kid, I think this was back in 2017, I believe.
Yeah.
You noticed that when he said capitalism, like she just literally, like, it was kind of like rolled her eyes, or kind of like kind of taken it back, like, how dare you mention?
He asked for a populist left message. Like, he wasn't even asking for, like, and she immediately was like, communism. Like, basically. You know, like,
basically, but like just the way that kind of disdain, as far as, and he didn't even say socialism. Like, he said populist. Like, can you move more in the populist direction the same way that the Republicans have? And basically she was just like, no, we're capitalists through and through, you know. And I know she said it recently, like, the Democratic Party is a capitalist party. So so again, this is part of the reason why Congressman Bowman stopped short of saying everything is tied to capitalism when the leader of his party, is pro-capitalism. So it kind of look funky if he's talking about capitalism, how much the Great Replacement theory is tied to that, and then not being able to say, but my leader is a capitalist.
Yeah.
Take a look at the next slide. And we know about this guy.
Shut up, fat.
Right now, billionaires pay an average rate of 8% on their total income. 8%, that's the average they pay. Now, I'm a capitalist, but if you can make $1 billion, great. Just pay your fair share. Pay a little bit. A firefighter and a teacher pay more than double the tax rate that a billionaire pays. That's not right.
Sorry, I had to add that. I got creeped out by it. I'm sorry to everyone in the chat. I had to creep you out too. I had to creep you out too. It was a great thing to do.
Same, very good.
I loved it.
Like, why did he do that? Like it was a secret. It's like he was trying to tell a secret. Like, that's
but you
not.
know what though?
That's
but you know
not
what
right.
though? In a lot of ways, it is a secret. Like the idea that capitalism is like pretty much the issue. Like in many, issues I think that we talk about, in the space, it's the core issue, and it's a shame that we kind of talk around it, but never kind of get to the root of it in terms of like, kind of recognizing the idea of like capitalism is what is driving us to essentially despair in this country. And yeah, like I said, it's just a shame that Bowman had the platform, and especially, as I said, given that this was a room full of teachers, would have been educated enough to kind of make those connections on their own, or at least have an idea, and they failed to do that. So for me, just his speech in that sense kind of fell flat for me.
Yeah. Well, and it explains, like, I think his speech, he's trying to make a big Republican straw man boogeyman too. Yeah. Where it's like, not explaining why any of these things are bad or need to be worked on or whatever, just that they're bad because they're doing it. You know.
And when I was talking with Sabi about this yesterday, and I remember someone in the chat mentioned this, like that kind of, that's kind of like in a way derogatory towards not Republican politicians, but like Republican working class.
Yeah.
Because it kind of puts them in the sense of like, you're the other that hates, like people who are not like you. When the reality of it is like, it's tied to social and economic issues, and not issues necessarily in relation to party. So yeah, again, like I just hated the fact that Jamaal Bowman kind of made all of this a right-wing talking point, when the root of it is capitalism, which affects the working class, the class that, like, allegedly he's supposed to represent, and he failed to take that time with us to kind of talk about it. You know, and like I said, even yesterday, on Sabi's stream, like Jamaal Bowman gave his speech and left. Like he didn't take any questions from us, like he didn't engage. And funny enough, if you watch his speech, he said, you need to engage with us. Like he didn't even take the time, to engage with teachers right then and there when he had the opportunity to. So, like, I just felt like.
Did he kiss any babies? Like,
there weren't any babies yet. So.
Oh, darn. I mean, that's what matters. We all need to see who can kiss babies. That's who should get elected. But yeah, I mean, spot on, bro. Like,
And that concludes my two-parter rant.
woo, we did it.
Yeah. So
Oh, bitches.
All right. So